Tonight, humanitarian crisis, the efforts to get aid to Gaza. President Trump weighs in.
I want to make sure they get the food, every ounce of food.
The latest on U.S. efforts to help hungry Palestinians, free the remaining Israeli hostages, and usher in a peace deal between Israel and Hamas. Plus, the president negotiates another trade deal ahead of his August 1st deadline. The details and what the latest trade truce means for you. And ditching the screens and getting back to the great outdoors.
What camps do is they allow kids to unplug from a very complicated world and plug into this incredible Christ-centered community.
Why more teens are rediscovering faith and friendship with a classic summer pastime. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Tonight, Israel facing growing calls to allow more aid into Gaza. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. President Trump is turning up the pressure on Israel, saying many in Gaza are starving and vowing to set up food centers to speed up aid. Prime Minister Netanyahu, on the other hand, insists there's no starvation, even as the World Health Organization warns nearly 1 in 5 children under 5 in Gaza City is dangerously malnourished. Israel has now announced a daily tactical pause in 3 parts of Gaza to allow more supplies in. The military says it shows starvation isn't a weapon of war, while aid groups argue it's still far from enough to meet the desperate need. And for more on this, let's bring in our panel, CBN senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright at the White House and Jonathan Conricus, a former IDF spokesperson and senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Gentlemen, welcome. Kelly, let's start with you. The president's comments appear to put him at odds with Netanyahu. What is driving this shift in tone from the White House?
Well, while it does appear that he is at odds with Bibi Netanyahu, you can trust that he really is not. He understands the full game of what's going on here. But at the same time, because he is a humanitarian, he sees what's going on the ground. He sees the pictures of starving children. And because of that, the president is stepping up to say something needs to be done. Let's use this moment while we're still waiting for a ceasefire to address the humanitarian needs going on among the Palestinian people, men, women, and most notably children. The president, with UK PM Keir Starmer by his side today in Scotland, stated this.
I want to make sure they get the food, every ounce of food. I think you want the same
absolutely.
thing.
It's an absolute food.
Because that food isn't being delivered. Or at least all of it.
And I must admit that the president is concerned about that, but there are also airdrops going on right now, humanitarian airdrops with food getting to the Palestinian people. But a lot of people looking at it from the outside say that's not enough. The president wants to do more about that, and that's why he made that statement today.
Yeah, Israel, of course, is accusing Hamas of taking most of that food. President Trump kind of alluding to that there, that these people who are starving are not getting the food. Jonathan, how is this increased pressure from the White House playing in Israel, and what do you make of the IDF's decision to pause fighting in certain areas to deliver this aid?
I think this is a strategic milestone. Sadly, I have to admit that it is an achievement for Hamas. They ran a very successful media campaign in international media. It culminated with the French announcement that they would recognize a Palestinian state. And another milestone on the way was 27 countries that criticized Israel and applied pressure on Israel to stop the fighting, and actually hardly naming Hamas as the side that refuses a ceasefire and continues to use human shields and to hold Israeli hostages. And regrettably, what the decision, by the way, it's a decision made by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, not by the IDF. The IDF doesn't make decisions. The IDF executes decisions made by the elected officials in Israel, and I regret it because it undoes many months of fighting. And basically where we are now is that Hamas got what they wanted, which is the continued or renewed flow of goods into Gaza, and that aid is coming to the corrupt and violent and oppressive hands of Hamas. Hamas will use the humanitarian currency, They don't look at it as aid, but they look at it as currency. They will use it against the population. They will strengthen their position in Gaza. And what it effectively does is that it, I think, lowers the chances of a ceasefire. It elevates the price that Israel will have to pay for live hostages to get them back home to their families. And I think it lowers the chances of a peaceful resolution to this war that has been going on since October 7 and until today, almost 2 years. So I'm afraid it's a negative milestone. International pressure brought to bear on Israel, and Israel unfortunately responding the way it did.
Yeah, the Free Press had an article today, and it was talking about how, you know, in most situations like this, most of leadership would surrender if they saw their people starving in this way, but that's not what Hamas is doing. Kelly, the White House mentioned setting up food centers inside Gaza. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The president talked about that today, setting up food centers in Gaza, free of any boundaries and no fencing around them. That is something that he wants to achieve in order to make sure that people are getting the food. But here's the problem, and Jonathan pointed that out correctly. The problem is Hamas can go in and take advantage of that situation and actually bring more pain, inflict more pain on its own people in order to make Israel look bad in that process. And certainly senior government officials that I've spoken to in Israel have stated that that is a real life scenario that can happen. Now, Jonathan can address that more than myself. But the bottom line is the president sees something that has to be done. He's frustrated with Hamas. He knows that Hamas is the impediment to that ceasefire. He's also frustrated with Bibi Netanyahu because he believes that more needs to be done in order to broker a deal. But bringing about some sort of agreement with Hamas is just a near impossible situation because of the fact that Hamas does not mind using its own people and putting them in harm's way just to achieve their own goal of staying in power.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I think that we should acknowledge that there is a functioning system of delivering food to Palestinians, and the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, led by Reverend Johnny Moore, they've delivered more than 95 million meals in about 5 weeks of work. That is no small amount, and that, by the way, is a threat to Hamas, and Hamas perceives it as a threat. And all of Hamas's demands, when they speak with the French, when they speak with the Qataris and the Egyptians, they want the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation out because they know that that is a rival and that will undermine Hamas's stranglehold over the civilian population. I remain hopeful because at the end of the day, even with this current setback, I know that there are plans to re-engage here and to enhance operations against Hamas. The only way forward is victory, peace and stability, and the end of suffering for everybody involved can only come once Hamas is defeated and once the long process of rebuilding Gaza will begin. Safety and security for Israelis and a dignified existence for Palestinians cannot happen as long as Hamas is there. We know it, and I think that'll be the eventual end of this conflict.
Okay, gentlemen, we are out of time. We have to leave it there. Kelly and Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
In Washington, pressure continues to build on the Epstein files. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are trying to push the Trump administration to release all unclassified material. But as Washington correspondent Caitlin Burke reports, the president is all but ignoring the topic.
Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna are crafting bipartisan legislation that would require any federal files related to Jeffrey Epstein be released. They maintain their effort will result in both transparency and protection.
We're trying to get justice for the victims and transparency for America. And so, we've redacted things before. We don't want to hurt the victims.
The president should say, I ran on this. The attorney general promised this. We're going to do a clean, full release.
Meanwhile, President Trump continues to try and shift the focus away from this issue. This weekend in Scotland, telling reporters they should be talking about his administration's accomplishments over the last 6 months.
I'm focused on making deals. I'm not focused on conspiracy theories that you are. I mean, I watch you people. It's so sad. You ought to talk about the success of our country instead of this nonsense that you talk about over and over again.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, appearing to fall in line with the president, sent lawmakers home early for their August break rather than voting on the Epstein measure.
I'll tell you what's politically going to be a liability is if we don't vote on this and we go into the midterms and everybody just check out because Republicans didn't keep their promise in Donald Trump, we'll lose the majority.
While Johnson insists he agrees with releasing the unclassified files, he labels Khanna and Massey's measure reckless and points out that the congressional schedule was set a year ago and he's adhered to it.
What we did do this week is end the chaos in the Rules Committee because the Democrats are trying to use this in a shameless manner for political purposes, quite obviously. They hijacked the Rules Committee and they tried to turn it into an Epstein hearing.
This past Thursday and Friday, the Deputy Attorney General met with Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's former partner. Since she's serving a 20-year prison sentence, some believe she should be offered a pardon in exchange for her full and truthful testimony. Monday, she appealed her conviction to the Supreme Court. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. And coming up, the United States strikes a major trade deal with the European Union. What it could mean for the cost of some European products. Welcome back. After months of tense negotiations, the United States and the European Union have announced a tentative trade agreement. It includes a 15% tariff on most products from the European Union's 27 nations. The EU has also agreed to buy $750 billion in American energy and invest $600 billion in the U.S. Analysts warn consumers can expect price hikes in German cars, French perfume, and pharmaceuticals. All right, for more on this, let's bring in Mark Hamrick, Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst for Bankrate.com. Mark, welcome. This seems like a huge win for America. Mark, what's your initial reaction to this new deal between the U.S. and the EU?
Jenna, let's go with the broad brushstrokes, first of all, of where we were before the broad brushstrokes of this agreement were announced. And we still need a lot of details, and that is why many analysts are rather reticent to say, how exactly this is going to impact us, because it was a handshake. There were, broad aspects of the agreement were announced, but there are a lot of details still to come. But in terms of, as we've been discussing tariffs more broadly, we remind ourselves that these are taxes on imports coming into the United States. And ahead of this announcement, the expectation was that the European Union's products would face a tax of about 30%. Now, broadly speaking, that's been reduced to 15%, and so people were looking for a bad outcome, and this outcome isn't as bad. And so, down the road, economists still think that for the full year, we're looking at an increase in the inflation rate to an annualized rate of about 3%. They broadly look for growth this year to come in at 1% rather than the usual 2%. And so, as you said, this affects the 15% on cars, 15% on pharmaceutical products, the drugs that people need to take in the United States that come from Europe, principally Ireland, and semiconductors. And so this may be good for the semiconductor industry in the United States, but it also means that it's actually a lower tariff on cars principally coming from Germany into the United States. I think if there's any most positive news about this, it is that there was no apparent EU retaliation. In other words, they aren't going to tax U.S. exports from what we can tell. And as you said, there are some very broad ideas here about the EU investing in the United States and buying energy products.
Yeah, it's not just the EU, too. Japan, President Trump recently announced a massive trade deal with Japan. His tariffs, Mark, have been hugely controversial. He's gotten a lot of criticism for them. But are these tariffs actually working as we see these deals negotiated that really, by all appearances, seem to benefit the U.S.?
Well, it's very early days, Jenna. We're speaking here on the doorstep of August. We had the initial announcement in April, and it's way too early to know what the impacts on U.S. industry will be, because it takes a long time to build a plant to manufacture something. I think one of the benefits that people are broadly rallying around is the fact that the revenues that are being collected for the United States government are in the billions of dollars, and that will go to satisfy perhaps about a tenth of the annual deficit that we have, and we'll see how it relates down the road. These taxes are being paid by someone, typically the importing company. So we'll see how it works out, but I think that, earlier we thought it could be a pretty challenging situation if we just want to focus on the EU situation. Now that's been reduced effectively by about half, and so you have to say, well, okay, that's not as much of a hit as businesses and ultimately consumers might have to take.
Yeah. All right, Mark Hamrick with Bankrate. Always good to see you. Thank you, Mark. And still to come, a growing camp craze. What's driving the demand for faith-based summer fun? Well, the summer heat is turning dangerous. More than 170 million people across the U.S. are dealing with extreme heat this week. In Georgia, Florida, and the Carolinas, it could feel as hot as 110 degrees. The good news, temperatures should start to cool down by the weekend. Until then, health officials say stay indoors when you can and drink lots of water. It is certainly hot here in D.C. too. All right, while many are trying to stay inside and beat the heat, others are heading outdoors for a different reason. Christian summer camps are seeing record demand as parents look for ways to get their kids away from the screens and out in nature and connecting with God. CBN's Brody Carter has more from Maryland's River Valley Ranch.
Blast off! It's a wild ride, but Christian summer camps are proving that the biggest leap is the leap of faith.
It's no secret that kids are dealing with more than they probably ever have. And there is an incredible rise in anxiety in our society, and we see kids coming here and bringing that here.
Nice job, high five.
Christian camps are filling up faster than ever, with wait lists and record enrollment reported nationwide. At the heart of this trend is a simple desire to unplug, reset, and rediscover faith.
So what camps do is they allow kids to unplug from a very complicated world and plug into this incredible Christ-centered community where they can build relationships with each other. They can have mentors and counselors.
Camping runs deep for John Bissett. His grandfather, John, co-founded River Valley Ranch in Manchester, Maryland, almost 75 years ago. John continues the legacy with a clear mission: to show kids that Jesus isn't just part of life, he is life.
And when you come to camp, they realize I can do hard things. They realize this is a place where someone actually saw me and loved me for who I am. And then they hear this message of there's a God of the universe that created you on purpose for a purpose, and you can have a relationship with him.
John points to stats to explain why kids need camp, including teens spending up to 8 hours a day on screens with less than 7 minutes outside and under 4 minutes each day in meaningful conversation with a trusted adult. RVR is one of more than 7,000 overnight camps nationwide, working to lift the digital veil and help kids see real life, real relationships, and a real God who loves them.
The needs of young people stay the same, right? I mean, kids still need to feel loved. They still need to belong. They still need to feel accepted.
Greg Hunter with the Christian Camp and Conference Association represents more than 850 U.S. faith-based camps. He says time spent in nature can lower stress, boost mental health, and offer an antidote to what some call nature deficit disorder.
Just exposure to nature reduces the stress hormone cortisol in the human body. So being connected to creation is therapeutic.
You guys ready?
Even as demand surges, a national staffing shortage is forcing many camps to cut programs or turn kids away.
I'm 6 years out of college, and I was thinking I need like a full-time job and stuff, and summer pay isn't, exactly livable necessarily, but the Lord was just like, you need to come back here and I'll make the pay work and I'll be with you, provide for your needs.
Last year, more than 60% of camps were understaffed. Competing with corporate jobs, internships, and higher-paying gigs means camp ministry is often overlooked.
I'm always reminded of the simplicity of the gospel and how Jesus meets people wherever they are, and the kids just have a very simple faith, which sometimes we can make really complicated, but they just see the beauty in it.
For camp leaders like Jen, this simplicity is why she spent more than a decade working at camp. As camps struggle to staff fully, safety and emergency response are also under scrutiny. Sending a child to camp can also be an act of trust for parents, a trust put to the test this summer when heavy rain led to a deadly flash flood that struck Camp Mystic in Texas. Though not affiliated with the Christian Camp Association, the tragedy prompted camps nationwide to reevaluate weather alerts, safety protocols, and staffing.
We had a crisis that happened here 11 years ago. We had a storm that came through, unexpected, strong microburst, it was called, came through and knocked a bunch of trees down, and it fell on a bunch of our campers, and actually one camper lost his life, and it was absolutely devastating for us because obviously we're here because we want to impact kids in a positive way.
Bissett says that event led them to change their routine, from daily weather alerts to camp-wide emergency training. At RVR, safety isn't just a checklist. It's a commitment shaped by experience and rooted in faith.
Whenever I see kids up here, it puts them in a new position. They're vulnerable, they're scared, especially if they have a fear of heights and things like that. So getting them to explore those challenges, and we love to say here, pushing them outside of their comfort zone, is really crucial for having those gospel teaching moments.
While fun remains central to the experience, it's a week that can shape a lifetime for many families. More than 80% of pastors report either receiving their call to ministry or having a significant spiritual experience at camp.
We have people that come here, and people who have come here in the past for 1 week, and they come back and say this was the most significant week of their entire life.
Reporting from Manchester, Maryland, Brody Carter, CBN News.
Finally tonight, a traveling group of pets with some unique abilities. They're known as the Ultimuts. Melissa Millay is an animal trainer of 25 years and came up with the idea to showcase animals with special talents. On the weekends, she travels around Canada with her 9 dogs and 5 cats to perform tricks they've learned together, like balancing on balls or riding scooters. She says most of the animals are rescues and 4 are deaf, but that hasn't stopped them from learning.
The truth is that dogs don't speak English and they have a harder time responding to verbal cues. Hand signals are easier.
And some of the Ultimuts have even made it into the Guinness Book of World Records or into some Hollywood movies. Melissa says her goal is to champion animals that otherwise might be overlooked. And that's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.